y'all? My name is Isaiah Contreras. I'm doing a presentation today on the Spanish flu, and here I go. The microscopic killer circled the entire globe in 4 months, claiming the lives of more than 21 million people. The United States lost 675,000 people to Spanish flu in 1918. More casualties than World War I, World War II, the Korean War, and the Vietnam War combined, which was circa Pan American Health Organization. Today I want to explain the Spanish flu and the consequences of the disease. First, I will discuss the causes and symptoms of the Spanish flu. Next, I will discuss the spread of the Spanish flu. And then lastly, I will discuss the resulting social consequences of the Spanish flu in the world. So for my first point, I'm going to be discussing the causes and symptoms of the Spanish flu, which are the following. The Spanish flu is a form of influenza caused by an H1N1 virus that started in some type of bird, avian origin. The Spanish flu was a new influenza that spread throughout the world. Because the virus was new, that meant very few people had immunity to the disease. Researchers believe the Spanish flu most likely originated in the United States. One of the first recorded cases was on March 11, 1918 at Fort Riley in Kansas. This was a result of the overcrowding and unsanitary conditions, creating a fertile breeding ground for the virus, allowing a form of bird flu to transmit to mammals. Within 1 week, 522 men had been admitted to the camp hospital suffering from the same severe influenza. The following weeks, the Army reported similar outbreaks throughout the U.S. This includes Virginia, South Carolina, Georgia, Florida, Alabama, and California. Symptoms of the Spanish flu were similar to those we see in the flu now, just more severe, and this included a sudden and sometimes very high fever, dry cough, headache, and body aches, sore throats, chills, runny nose, loss of appetite, and fatigue. The Spanish flu infected an estimated 500 million people globally and killed about 50 million people from around 1918 to 1919. This amounted to about 33% of the world's population affected at the time. As you can see, the Spanish flu was very serious and not exclusive to a single region of the world, but soon all of it. The spread is a very important factor when talking about the history and general facts of the Spanish flu. Secondly is the spread of Spanish flu. The Spanish flu infected an estimated 500 million people globally and killed about 50 million from the year 1918 to 1919. This amounted to about 33% of the world's population affected at the time. By May 1918, influenza began to disappear in the United States. Even so, this was just the beginning. Soldiers at Fort Riley were ready, incubated the virus during their long, cramped voyage to France. Once they arrived in France, the virus exploded, striking the Allied forces and Central Powers in equal force. The Americans fell ill with a 3-day fever or purple death. The French caught purulent bronchitis, and the Italians suffered sandfly fever. German hospitals filled with victims of Bliss catarrh or Flanders fever. And then from the battlefields of Europe, the Spanish flu quickly spread globally as the disease spread from Norway east to China, southeast to India, and as far south as New Zealand. All of these showing even islands weren't safe. Traveling via naval ships and carriers, merchant vessels and trains, the virus traveled to the four corners of the earth by the summer of 1918. This continues to prove the severity of the Spanish flu on not only the U.S. but the world, and how many lives changed and people it affected. Lastly are the resulting social consequences as a result of Spanish flu. Life in the U.S. changed socially because of standstill in some parts of the United States. Boston officials closed public schools, salons, and soda shops. Chicago police officers were ordered to arrest anyone sneezing or coughing in public. And in Nashville, all public gatherings, including movie houses, dance halls, and pool parlors, were prohibited. Even ministers were ordered not to hold church services. Jeffrey Taubenberger, Chief Auxiliary Pathology and Genetics at the U.S. Armed Forces Institute of Pathology, and a world-renowned leader in the Spanish flu research, estimates that about a third of the U.S. population was infected with the Spanish flu. There's a massive shortage of medical care of all kinds, he says. Many cities' healthcare services were already overtaxed by the war. For example, 1/3 of Nashville doctors were treating service people overseas where Spanish flu hit. Nurses became an invaluable asset to communities, circa Pan American Health Organization. The properties that made the Spanish flu so deadly are not well understood. With no vaccine to protect against the influenza infection and no antibiotics to treat secondary bacterial infections that could be associated with influenza infections, control efforts worldwide were limited to non-pharmaceutical inventions. And these are just some of the facts and history of the Spanish flu and consequences that resulted from it. And that's pretty much it, y'all. I believe it is important for us to know about our past and important moments in history so we can learn from these events such as Spanish flu and be prepared next time, which I think we have achieved with coronavirus and COVID-19. And thank y'all for listening.